just do it. It'll turn out okay. And today I am with the host and creator of another podcast that's been on for 10 years, seasons 2. But wait, there's Lore.
A little longer than 10 years, but definitely 10 seasons.
Yeah.
That was a very nice anime intro that you had. I appreciate that.
Thanks. You may not know this, but your podcast is kind of the start of this podcast, kind of.
It started this. How did it start this podcast?
Well, about 10 years ago or so, you were looking for producers and stuff to help you with There's Lore on the platform known as XSplit at the time.
Yes,
and I was one of those people you trained. But then the show fell apart for a while, so I decided to use my talent to start my own show.
Well, there you go. Look at that. See, you take something that went wrong and you do something right with it. It's how life's got to go sometimes. Yeah. You know?
So what made you want to start But Wait, There's Lore?
Originally I started But Wait, There's Lore just because I like talking about like the story of Warcraft, right? I thought it was very good back then. World of Warcraft was in its infancy at the time. I think the show started right around the TTwC era. Maybe a little bit after that. It's like 2008 is when the first episode was, the middle of 2008. And yeah, I mean, I had been doing sort of like an anime podcast before that, and I wanted to transition to something different and new and exciting and fresh. And a little, well, some people know this guy named Total Biscuit, and he ran a little podcasting website for WoW called Warcraft Radio. And at the time, there was a lore show on there, and it was going on hiatus. They wanted to bring a new one on, and so me and a couple of other folks from a little internet forum called Scrolls of Lore got together and created a podcast. And here we are, like 20 years later, almost 15 years later, and we're still kind of going on. I'm the last one of the original cast left, so I guess I own it. But yeah, I mean, it's been a long road from then, but that's pretty much the story about that. I like talking about lore, and there was an opportunity to create a podcast, and so I did it.
And did you ever play the original RTS Orcs and Humans back in the day?
Yes, I have played every Warcraft title that exists, including ones that aren't released to the public. The old Warcraft Adventures game. I even played that big guy, which was a Warcraft Adventures was an RPG that Blizzard had created, and it was nearly finished. They were in sort of the polishing stage, and then they decided not to release that game. But if you are savvy enough on the inner tubes, you can pick that up, and you can find it it's floating around on the internet, and you can pick it up and play it. And it's definitely buggy and definitely a little harsh at times, not very polished, but it is, I think, still a lot of fun. It follows basically the story of Thrall breaking out of Durnhold Keep and forming the new horde on.
I think I've seen that on the internets before, kind of based on the Lord of the Clans novel.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's basically the story of the Lord of the Clans. They took the story that they had for that game, and they wrote the book, The Lord of the Clans.
Yeah, that animation was really, really choppy.
It was ahead of its time.
True. But I think it was Warcraft 3 that really pulled the story more, because before the first 3 games and expansions, the Beyond the Portal, were more of a back and forth side story thing.
Yeah, they were.
Because, like in the first game, the humans winning are definitely not canon.
Right. Yeah. So in those original games, the original Orcs and Humans, you had 2 stories. If you played as the human side, then the humans won. If you played as the orc side, then the orcs won. But the way that, and then of course you move into the second game, Warcraft 2 and Tides of Darkness, they come in and they do the whole invasion of Lordaeron, and obviously inevitably the Horde fails, and they kind of realistically it's one single war, but we call it like the first and second war. But the reality is it was all one big war. That's the way I see it. So
Just
the
the time
Horde
that just
never actually won, right? They beat us in Stormwind, but in terms of the actual war, they never won. They were
because we
pushed
destroyed the
back to
Dark
the
Portal, or
yeah,
at least temporary thing. I, I
indeed.
think then the sequel, the first expansion, Beyond the Dark Portal, was more of a mixed bag thing.
Yeah,
Because we did close the portal, but also Norzul did escape, so that part was true too.
indeed. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, well, it's a good thing to see that nothing ever bad came from that escape. Nothing bad at all.
Nothing. What could possibly go wrong?
Uh, so like, but yeah, so yeah, a lot of people seem to got into the game, got into the Warcraft in the third game.
Yeah. Warcraft 3 was definitely the creme de la creme of the Warcraft RTS series. Definitely brought a lot of people into the Warcraft universe. And I think if Warcraft 3, for example, wasn't as successful as it was, I don't think that World of Warcraft would have been as successful as it was. Um, and obviously Warcraft 3 was what really got me into the story. I had actually watched an uncle of mine play the original two games, Warcraft, Orcs, and Humans, and all that. So I had known of the existence of Warcraft, but I had never played it. I just watched him play. I was quite young then. But with Warcraft 3, I definitely played the hell out of that game. I have well over 100 campaign playthroughs on various difficulties. Even some like additional like fan made like super hardcore difficulties. Um, so I'm very well versed in Warcraft 3, and that's what got me into the story of World of Warcraft. I always say this. I say this on my podcast. I say this when I talk to other people and things like that. Like, I'm actually not a fan of MMORPGs. I'm not a big MMO person, right? Like, I'm not into the Final Fantasy RPG that's really popular right now. New World that was popular for a little while before it fell off the face of the earth with bad development. Um, things like that. Even like Elden Ring is like a big thing right now, right? Like, it's a big game out in there. I'm not an RPG or an MMO person. I pretty much have always been, in terms of my gaming, into the RTS side of things. I like things that kind of make you use your head a little bit. And so um the only reason that I've played WoW for as long as I have is the continuation of that story that started in Warcraft 3.
Yeah, before, speaking of RTSs, before Blizzard finally got Classic back and stuff, I thought it'd be cool if they ever did a Warcraft 4, it would be the classic story, but in the RTS Warcraft 3 kind of styles. The storylines you can follow through.
Like in vanilla?
Yeah.
Well, what, just out of curiosity, I always like to ask this question when people bring that up, because it gets brought up a lot. Like, I would like to see a Warcraft 4 that takes place like in vanilla WoW. What story would they follow?
Well, they could do like different campaigns, like the human campaign. They can follow the Five Brotherhood thing through Westfall and
Mm-hmm.
the prisons and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
then the Orc, and then the Tauren could do their war with the Druids and Desolates and stuff through there. Of course the Undead campaign through Silver Pine through there, and and then and they all the Orcs could go through their quest line through what was it? Oh, the the mountain, uh, Black Rock Mountain, through
Okay.
defeating the Dark Horde and stuff.
Yeah. See, yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of good fleshed out stories in the original game. Like, there are some pretty cool little hooks in there to follow. My biggest thing about that is I just don't think that there's really anything worth making a whole RTS campaign about. And the reason I say that is because, like, original WoW, vanilla WoW, was so sort of segregated and separated with their stories. There's not really a place, in my
Yeah, true.
opinion, too much where the stories kind of converge in a way that makes sense for an RTS game.
That's true. But like I said, that for me, that's the only way to ever exceed those storylines, unless it's like hop on a private server, illegally and stuff.
Yeah. Which
until they rebuild them up.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that was really good for Blizzard to come out with WoW Classic, not only for the nostalgia factor and all that, but also for some of those people to revisit those storylines that were there before they remade the world in Cataclysm. And as they kind of remade the world, not nearly as big as they did in Cataclysm, but definitely they've changed some zones here and there throughout the various expansions. And so a lot of those older stories have been lost to time, unable to be played again. So it's great that they came out with a WoW Classic, so that people can experience that. It's just, again, it's weird to think. To me, it's weird to think of what they would do as an RTS game, what story they would tell for vanilla WoW, right? I think the best one would actually be potentially like the Anchorage storyline. Like, I think there's a lot of meat there that they could expand upon. That being said, and I think they'd have to weave some things in. Like, I would love to see an RTS version of like the Defias Brotherhood storyline, or even the Scarlet Crusade storyline. There's lots of cool little story, but you've got to weave them into a singular focus,
a greater overall story,
right?
Like maybe all ending up with the fight against Naxxramas 40-man.
Right. I mean, so it'd be like a whole, like, you'd get like 1 or 2 missions out of the Defias Brotherhood. You'd get maybe 3 or 4 out of the Scarlet Crusade stuff. But I mean, there's got to be some reason for everything to come together again, sort of like how Warcraft 3 did. Yes, they had 4 different missions, but the story came together at the end.
Oh yeah. So, did you have a favorite storyline back in vanilla when you played it originally?
Really didn't have like a favorite story. I mean, there were some cool ones like we talked about. Like, I do like the whole Defias Brotherhood thing. I do like, Onyxia's whole deal where she's like the de facto leader of Stormwind at the time. But she's a dragon all along. Look at us now. We're already back to dragons again. So I would say I don't really have like a favorite one. There are just a lot of really cool short stories in there that I think, as a sort of a compendium, make up a really good sort of set.
Speaking of dragons, do you think in this new expansion we're finally going to kill the red dragon? Because that's the one we haven't killed yet. We killed all other 4 aspects at least once.
Well, I mean, I don't see why we would kill Alexstrasza. And we did we kill Ysera? I mean,
we kind of did in the Legion.
We killed sort of like a corrupted Ysera. Like, you have to ask yourself, was that really Ysera, or did we kill some corrupted form of her? Like, yes, it was the actual dragon Ysera, but
yeah, true.
It's sort of like with Maruzand, Nozdormu's counterpart. The thing that he is eventually going to become, right? We didn't, like, yes, we killed the technical Nozdormu, but it's a Nozdormu from the future. It's not the Nozdormu that we know.
Yeah, true.
So, in my opinion, we've really only killed 2 dragons, or dragon aspects, the blue and the black, Malagos and Deathwing, as his common name is. So I don't think we will kill Alexstrasza, but I do think Alexstrasza may perish in this expansion. I'm not going to stand by that prediction, but I could see it as a possibility. But I also could see it going the opposite way and not killing her at all, because it actually seems like they're trying to rebuild the dragon aspects, right? So Ysera's sister, Ysera's daughter or sister, I forget which one, is going to be the leader of the Green Dragonflight in this next expansion, right? You've got Kalecgos, who is now leading the blue, and you've got obviously Alexstrasza still leading the red, and Nozdormu still leading the bronze, which brings up an interesting thing. Dragonflight, this expansion is happening, and you've got Nozdormu, who eventually we know is going to turn into Morazan and create the infinite dragonflight. Will we be fighting the infinite dragon? Will that be another sort of thing that happens and occurs? Will they, like what's going on there? How is Nozdormu going to be sort of interacting with us with the knowledge that he's eventually going to turn on us? We know that and he knows that. And so that's like a really cool, interesting dynamic to look at for sure. And then, of course, with the Black Dragon flight, there's an even more interesting question going on there is like who's actually in charge of the Black Dragonflight. If you watch the original cinematic for Dragonflight, there were no black dragons that came to the Dragon Isles when it reopened. But you've got two very different, very potential leaders of a new Black Dragonflight. You've got Ebonhorn, obviously, who is who's in the form of a Titan right now in High Mountain, but he is he's a black dragon that escaped the corruption.
Oh yeah, the Leeson story in High Mountains. That
right, yeah.
The other not corrupted black dragon besides Rathion.
Right, the only one of the few others black dragons that escaped, and he's old and pretty wise and things like that. But then you've got a very young, very charismatic option in Rathian as well. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see if Rathian is going. My prediction on this is that Rathian will take control of the Black Dragonflight, and that Ebonhorn will be a very valuable sort of mentor to him, an advisor, as if you will.
So, on your personal thing, back. I don't know if you're still lean that way, but back in my last time I heard you back years ago, I need to catch up on your newer stuff. You were definitely more Alliance side than Horde side. Is that still true? I think he's frozen. Technical difficulties, folks. Technical difficulties. I hear these messages, apparently. Any commercials for stuff like this. So, how you all doing in the chat? So have you in chat played Warcraft before? What's your favorite storyline? I'm doing good. We gotta wait for my guest to come back. Oh, he's back. Welcome back.
Wow, my camera's really blown out and looking. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. Look, we've solved one problem.
That's like I said, some people's cameras just can't handle the internet.
Oh, the internet's fine. I'm not sure what happened there. I think I may have had like a little power surge because like all the lights on my very RGB lit up computer went off and then came back on. And then the microphone and camera stopped working. So that was just a really strange sort of thing going on there. I'm going to see if I can fix this weird washout on my camera here.
So did you hear my question before everything went kaput?
Yes, it was about the Horde and the Alliance, right?
Yeah, like before you. Last time I heard you, you're definitely a Team Alliance more than anything else. Is that still true?
That is definitely still true. That is 100% still the case. How about that? Do I look a little better now? I think I look a
Yeah.
little better now. 100% still the case. I am an Alliance guy through and through for the Alliance. I'm not sure how you feel about swearing on this podcast, but F the Horde, you know. Now, in my professional career, I joke about these things, but I do still follow like the Horde stories, and I do still talk about and teach about the Horde. Right, I don't exclude them from my podcast or anything. But on a personal level, yes, I am an Alliance player, and I will be until the day the Horde probably murders me in one way, shape, or form.
Either murders you or just finally gives in and joins the Alliance themselves.
Right, joining the winning side, the winning team.
So, speaking of that, so what do you think of Horde Lord? What do you think? What do you think of now that instead of a war chief, there's now like a council?
A council.
Yeah.
The dwarves did it first, so it's just
True.
another. It's just another example of the Horde taking things from the Alliance and making them their own. That's all it is. That's all that. No, I think it's an interesting concept, but I feel like this was done in a way, and this is purely like story wise. I think it was done to sort of break the mold of the Horde war chiefs always being bad. Like Garrosh was bad, Sylvanas was bad, misunderstood but bad. And so like it kind of it started to become a bit of a meme that whoever the Horde war chief was going to be the next expansion's big boss, right? Like the next expansion's big bad. And so I think it was done in order to sort of from a storytelling perspective, break that mold, but also from the story of Warcraft being that the Horde perhaps saw this too and realized that it's probably better to have a council of people running the Horde than a singular person. So now it's more of a democratic process than a dictatorship where the past couple of Horde war chiefs, and even not just now, but in the past, right? Some of the older war chiefs of the Horde kind of took a dictatorial approach to leading the Horde,
like the Gul'dan Blackhand thing.
right, exactly. See, so I think they've just kind of learned that it's better to have sort of a more democratic thing going on than a dictatorship thing. Like as members of the Horde, that way they're not constantly being led down a path that they don't want to go down.
Speaking of Sylvanas, what did you think about that whole her and Uthro too? That whole split soul storyline they had.
I mean, I thought it was interesting. I wished it would have played out a little more in depth than it did. Like I kind of, and this made. I kind of feel like it was a cheap shot, right? Like I feel like it was a kind of a cheap way out of the whole Sylvanas storyline. Like we've spent years and years and years with her building herself up to be sort of this evil person, but doing things for what she believed to be the right reason, right? Like that's what I don't like. It was almost sort of like Illidan's story. He was doing a lot of really bad, terrible things, but he was doing them for what he felt was a good and proper and just reason. And like that's the way they sort of, in my opinion, presented Sylvanas as someone who was doing some bad things, but doing them for a good reason, when it actually turns out, no, this was just the evil side of her the whole time. But the good side of her was still in her heart, or whatever you want to call it, locked away in the Shadowlands. And so I thought it was just a really cheap way to kind of come out of that. And I wish that it was different.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it'd be better, if they did that. If they gave some clues in the past, that this was happening, and all of a sudden, her soul back in the middle of the expansion.
it feels in a way almost as though they kind of they rewrote the ending of Sylvanas' story. It just feels very out of place and kind of weird to me.
Yeah. The one thing I did like in that expansion was Garas was saying, "I'd do it again."
Yeah,
I'm still a bitch. I'm still evil.
well, but see, the thing, Garrosh isn't evil though.
Yeah.
He's just
evil in a certain
kind
point
of
of
like
view.
we were talking before the show. He got a bit fanatical,
Yeah.
right? He got to a point where he saw the Horde as being one thing. This is what the Horde should be. It should be about honor and glory and warriorship and war. We have to fight. Like, that's our destiny. That's our duty. And he pushed that really, really hard. And he's saying when he comes out in that raid and he's like, I don't need anyone telling me what to do, or I'm not here to take orders from anyone. He's saying, like, I am the leader of the Horde, and my belief is that the Horde should have been this, and I stand by that belief. And if I had to do it all over again, I would do it exactly the same.
Yeah, that's like I said. They didn't because he didn't have a sweat soul or anything. He's like, I did because I did it.
Yeah, I did it because I wanted to. That's what I felt was what was right for the Horde. And so I mean, he did some terrible evil things, but does that make him evil? I don't think that it makes him
I think
evil.
it just makes him stupid, in my opinion.
It makes him hard-headed and stubborn.
Yeah. Yeah. I've talked to more people about what happened if Karen and Vol'jin tried to actually cancel him instead of just go out, you're idiot, I'm not listening to you.
Well, number one, Karen did sort of behind the scenes do a lot of manipulation and a lot of back channel talking with the enemies of Garrosh, specifically with Jaina, a lot, and trying to make peace with things. And even he challenged him to Mak'gora, and we all know obviously how that ended. But you've got Bane, who sort of took up the mantle of that and was still doing a lot of back channel discussion and talking.
Yeah.
And of course you had Sourfang as well. He went and went to Thrall and was like, but that was obviously more with Sylvanas. But you have to imagine that he was doing similar things. There were a lot of high-ranking members of the Horde that were probably doing things in the background to kind of push things in the opposite direction that Garrosh wanted to go. And so in terms of if Cairn or Vol'jin, right, as I believe the other one you mentioned, if they could have done more. I think they could have done more, but you also have to understand the mindset of a member of the Horde and the concept of being a member of the Horde. Like, you are to follow your war chief, and that's been so ingrained into that culture for so long that it's a really difficult decision to go against your war chief. Even if you disagree with them, your war chief is supposed to have a bigger picture, a bigger plan. And so I like to see it as them just wanting to make sure that they weren't missing the bigger picture or the bigger plan, and having to make that to them, you have to realize it's a very difficult and very serious decision to go against your war chief.
On the other side on the Alliance side, when Varian was killed, do you think Anduin should have automatically been the leader of the Alliance, or should have gone to another member of the races?
So you're actually asking two questions here.
Okay.
I think. Which is, so Stormwind and really all of the human capitals, all of the human settlements are a monarchy government system. So when Anduin or when Varian died,
I mean,
Anduin
yeah,
would
automatically comes.
automatically become king of Stormwind.
Yeah,
What you're asking is, should the king of Stormwind still been the leader of the alliance, right? Like,
yeah,
because the question of should he have been king is yes. Like,
yeah.
all
That
human, with the exception of Dalaran, all human settlements are a
yeah,
monarchy
yeah.
government system.
I yeah.
Um, I think that you actually saw a little bit of dissent in Anduin being the leader of the alliance.
I knew Tyrande and stuff was more vintage based and did that Night Warrior thing.
Right, but even before that moment, there was, I believe I don't remember what book it was. There was a book I read where basically the Night Elves were just kind of doing their own thing. They didn't really want to participate much in the alliance leadership, right? They were almost considering breaking away from the alliance, similar to the Blood Elves in they broke away from the alliance, but they also, there was a time in one of the books, I believe, where it was when Jaina went on her little mad rampage in Dalaran.
In the mob,
Right.
Mr. Pandaria.
And Varian, basically screams at her, "You've ruined all of my work. I nearly had the Blood Elves back in the alliance. We had been talking and discussing, and we almost had the Blood Elves, a treaty with the Blood Elves that would bring them into the alliance again." And so I think that at the time, the Night Elves probably, I don't want to say witnessed that, but had an inkling that the humans were
Yeah.
the humans and dwarves were kind of molded or meddling into elvish affairs almost,
Yeah.
by trying to bring the Blood Elves back, as well as just the Night Elves being so far away from any other alliance settlement, right? It's hard to get information back and forth. And so I feel like the Night Elves kind of felt a little separated from the rest of the alliance, and considered very strongly doing their own thing and going their own way. And
Yeah.
so I think there was some animosity in that, but the only person realistically, I think, that could have been the leader of the alliance that was not human, was not Varian or Anduin, was Malfurion and Tyrande. But again, at the time, they felt so separated from the rest of the alliance that they probably wouldn't have been able to gather political the political clout to be accepted as the leaders of the alliance. Right? So it was easier to keep the status quo.
True. Yeah, I think a good choice might have maybe been Moria.
Moria, I don't think would have been a good choice in terms of, for the same reason. They were the Dark Iron Dwarves, which is who she was the leader of, very recently joined the alliance at that point. They're very young in the alliance at that point. And yes, go ahead, yeah.
Say, well, but like say Anduin's pretty young. I mean, he's good at human thing, but like there's other people that've been around the alliance leadership longer. Like the I don't know about the gnomes or something, or maybe the war.
I think the biggest thing and the biggest reason why Anduin was able to so easily continue on in his father's footsteps as being the leader of not only the humans of Stormwind, but also the leader of the Alliance, is because you have 4 races of the Alliance that are very, very close in terms of their political views, as well as their just interpersonal relationships. You've got the dwarves, specifically Curdran Wildhammer and the Bronzebeard clan. All right, so the Wildhammer clan and the Bronzebeard clan, not so much the Dark Iron clan, but those two that make up 2/3 of the dwarves that are in the alliance, are very, very close with Varian and Anduin. Anduin, had a relationship with both of those leaders before.
Yeah, he was kind of trained, not say trained by Moradin, but he was a lot of time up there when he was trained to be a priest.
Right. And then, of course, you also have Gen Greymane, who is close to Varian and Anduin, right? And then you have Gelbin Mekatork, the leader of the gnomes. who he's going to pretty much side with the dwarves no matter what. He's like they're allowing him to live in their kingdom and his people, so he's not going to go against the dwarves, right? But you have those four entities that hold a lot of sway. I mean, the only everything else you have are the Draenei and the night elves. But even then, Velen has been teaching Anduin, a lot of the priestly things that Anduin is learning. So Velen also had a really good relationship with Anduin. So the only people really on the outside of that relationship with Anduin were Malfurion and Tyrande with the Night Elves. So I just don't think that you would have really enough political clout in the alliance to usurp the human king of being the leader of the alliance.
Two things came up there. Speaking of the gnomes, do you think they'll ever get Nomormon back? I mean, and the Cataclysm.
They have some of Nomorgon back.
Oh yeah, true. Like in the Cataclysm, the trolls finally got their island back, but
yeah.
Then we had to redo Nomormon again, a different storyline.
Well, I mean, let's look at recent real life news, right? You have this whole conflict in Ukraine between the Ukrainians and the Russians, and Chernobyl was a big thing in the news because the Russians came in and as they kind of fought a big battle over there by Chernobyl and stirred up a bunch of radioactive material, and the things are going up. It was kind of, I think, probably blown a little bit out of proportion, but you've got the whole like radiation signatures are rising and things like that. I would imagine the same thing would happen or be happening with Nomorgon. Remember, Nomorgon was flooded with a World of Warcraft equivalent of radiation, right, and nuclear waste and material. So to go in, it's very similar to that. Chernobyl is, on the surface, is still an active place with a lot of people doing a lot of work. But you can't go back underground in Chernobyl yet. You can't go very far because there's still all of that radioactivity. Same thing, I think it's a good comparison to what's happening with Nomorgon. They've sort of gotten the surface levels reclaimed, but it's much more difficult to get down there into the lower levels, get deep into Nomorgon of old, if that makes sense. So there's still some bad things going on down there that are stopping them from being able to completely reclaim their lands. Now, the better question with that, honestly, is we have all of these, and this is always the thing that you have to deal with World of Warcraft and other high fantasy games and stories, right? You have some incredibly powerful wizards in the universe of Warcraft. You have, Jaina Proudmoore, for example. She could theoretically probably just blink into Nomorgon and magically dissipate all of the radiation that's there, therefore making it livable again, right? But they don't do that. It would be a very simple thing for a couple of powerful mages to go through there and just clean the whole place up and be done with it, and the gnomes can have their home back. But the thing about that is, when you're looking at these universes and things like that, there's a lot of things that to us just seem very easy to do, right? Like you should just do this because that would clear this whole mess up. But we're not writing the story either. And so, they've got to have Jaina preoccupied with something so that she can't go to Nomorgon and clean up all the dirty dishes and such that are in there. Or, they could have had any number of mages go down there and do something similar to that, magically dissipate the radiation that's there.
Well, speaking of that, if you're writing a story and stuff, if you could retcon something in the storyline, if you would, what would you retcon?
The entirety of Warlords of Draenor would be just disappeared. That whole timeline would go away.
We'll go straight from Mob to right to Legion.
We would go from Mists of Pandaria to, I don't know, maybe Garrosh attempting to go to the Mists of Pandaria, the Warlord's land, the alternate universe, alternate Draenor timeline, and just, I don't know, failing. And then like, let's just go to Legion now or something. Like, let's just skip the whole Warlords thing. We don't need it.
Yeah, that's the thing that got me too, is what, like when they first went back, he's going back in time to change history. No, it's a whole new world, a whole new timeline. nothing to do with the past at all. It's always confused me. Like, but there's still one legion. It's the same legion, but it's not the same legion. It is, but I'm thinking, is that what confused me was that Archimon that we killed at the end of war? Was that him before the tree or after the tree?
Yeah, the whole alternate universe thing and killing people and stuff like that. Like, it's a headache to deal with, and honestly, I feel like that's when the story sort of began, in my opinion, to fall apart. Granted, it's weird to look at it that way because Legion was such a good expansion, a good story expansion, and it's like it feels like they kind of like after that, and that was the end of it, and Warlords was sort of this weird sort of like detour in the story to get back to Legion, and then after Legion it was just like that was it. Like that's all that they knew was supposed to happen, right? And then from Legion on, it was I want to say maybe it's Denuzer's show at that point, Steve Denuzer, and I think that Steve has got to come up with his own material now, right? Like we don't have sort of a lot of that old stuff that was probably left by Metzen to guide that. And so I think naturally the story gets a little strange and a little weird and a little disconnected because now you have a whole new brain behind the story, a whole new perspective. And so for all of us that have been so used to Chris's storytelling, right? All of us that have been so used to Metzen being in charge of the narrative, and now we have a brand new guy who wasn't really mentored that much by Metzen, as the guy that was meant to replace Metzen was exited out of the company, and then Denuzer was brought in, and so I think there's a natural sort of disconnect there that there's not really a great way around or out of. I think we have to give Steve some time to build his part of the universe.
True.
And I hope and I have faith that Steve can do it. Like I think he's a damn good narrative designer. He's a damn good writer. But we have to, as a community, give him time to make it work.
That's another thing I liked about Legion is the quest storylines actually led to the dungeons or through the dungeons. There, that has happened a long time. Like in like the remake of God, I can't remember the names now. Oh, Scholomance and the Scarlet Chapel. The storyline to go there, we all of a sudden we just went there because reasons.
Yeah,
like in vanilla class again. The storyline went through. We went through the Westfall, ended up in Dead Mines. All of a sudden, we got this thing in the Dead Mines, which leads us all the way over to eventually to the original Stockades.
Yeah,
there's the storyline flowed, and for a while we were like, go there just because it's there.
I mean, I don't think you always have to have a reason to go somewhere, but I do also appreciate when we have a story that leads us there. And I think overall they've done a really good job of that. I think there's definitely been some misses, right, in terms of good storytelling leading you into a dungeon. But I do think over the years they've actually gotten better overall at that concept, and of weaving the dungeons into the story.
Yeah.
I would like for it to always be that way, but sometimes, the story just doesn't lend itself
to
being able to have that. So you do some fun things like revamping some of the older dungeons, and you don't have to have a story for that. You can just say, hey, we really liked these dungeons and we wanted to
here's the same, but here's here's the same dungeon but with new bosses in it.
Right. Yeah, it's just sort of like we wanted to revisit some of these old places. And that's a lot of people give Blizzard some flack about that, but I actually
Yeah.
understand this. Like, think
Yeah.
about when you're building something. If you have something where 90%
Yes.
of the work is already done,
Yes.
the pathways, the models, all of that's already done for you. Now you can spend a very minimal amount of time to get additional content to the players, but you can't ever satisfy everyone.
True. True. Like I said, like when we went back to Blackrock Mountain in the beginning of WAD. I think that tech happened before we went in the portal, but it was like why we they I don't think they really had a good storyline for going there. It's just, oh, we're here now with different bosses.
So Blackrock Mountain, I think they actually missed a really cool opportunity. Granted, now they wanted to bring Terralium back for Legion, and I understand that and I get that, but I think what they should have done with BRM is they actually should have redone the story of when the Horde was beaten at Blackrock Mountain for when Terralion or basically the time that Lothar died, when Anduin Lothar was killed by Doomhammer. I think that would have been a great opportunity to go back to that dungeon with a whole new story and a whole, or not a new story. It's obviously it's an older story, but a story that they could have told in game by going back, since we were going back in time, right, to old Draenor. Why not use that as an opportunity to showcase how the Horde's defeat at Black Rock Mountain went down, and when the Alliance lost, at the time, its greatest champion and Anduin Lothar, and the ascension of High Lord Terralion to his post, and sort of a big major moment in Terralion's life when sort of he became, it helped to grow and shape him as not only a person but also as a leader. I think that was a massively missed opportunity for Blizzard to introduce people to Terralion and still not spoil the surprise of when he came back in Legion. I think that would have been actually a really good thing for them to do, just because it would have introduced Terralion back in the day, right? So he's still lost, and they could even talk about that at the end of it, like have a little person tell you the story of it. So I mean, there's no story needed to go there because the story already exists. It's just sort of like a fun little thing to do, a fun exploration time for them to allow the players of WoW to explore some of that history and to get Anduin Lothar a model in the World of Warcraft game.
Speaking of models, that's the thing we have to go. When WAD first came out, I looked at the new model of his name is Khadgar. And like, did he get younger or something? He looks a lot younger.
Yeah, Khadgar's story is interesting. He is a young man,
And,
he
but
was
like,
for those that don't know, he was unnaturally aged by some magic in Karazhan. And there's more to the story than that, but that's the gist of it. He was a young red-haired little kid, basically 18 or 19 years old. I think he may have even been a little younger than that. But he was unnaturally and magically aged to be an older guy. In the original game, in I think it was Warcraft 2, wasn't it?
yeah.
He was Beyond the Dark Portal. He was like a really old man, big curly beard, bald headed.
Same way in Burning Crusade.
Right, and then in Burning Crusade, he had all of that. And yes, so they did model him to be younger. They cleaned him up really well and got him some Just for Men and some Bosworth, isn't that what it's called? Bosworth hair growth treatments.
Yeah,
Bosley. That's what it is.
Yeah, I know. It's like wait a minute, is he? He looks younger than he did before.
Yeah.
Okay,
that was a little bit of a retcon, but I think it was one that was needed because we got the Dadgar meme out of that whole thing, so I'm good with it.
Last thing is, I always wanted to see storyline stuff. I just wanted was wondering about the balance between the lore of the story and game mechanics.
Mhm.
Like back in vanilla and BC and starting and kind of beginning of Wrath, they had these attunement things, right? You do,
Yeah.
do this, and this, finally go in the dungeon or raid. But I'm like, what's the story reason for doing this? Lore reasons, like because lore technically you can only beat a boss once. So like, what's the path we follow to get?
So, I mean, I obviously I don't work for Blizzard, so I can't
Yeah,
tell you 100% what the case is. But what I imagine happens, in my old and wise years now, is that I mean, because this stuff used to upset me a lot. As I've gotten older and have like kids running around now, like my patience is a lot thicker than it used to be.
sure.
But so what I think happens with that is like they have a mechanic that they want to do or a progression system that they want to implement. And so they probably are going to the lore team and saying, "Hey, we need a story reason why we're doing this." And so you have to write some really weird story stuff sometimes to make all of that work, right?
Yeah,
You have to like the progression systems that we've been using, like in BFA with the Heart of Azeroth, right? Um, the story behind that is it's a piece, it's a gem of Azerite that you add power into. And so the story is that you're collecting Azerite. The progression system is the amount of Azerite you gather makes you more powerful. And so they had to write this whole Azerite system into the story of why we would be doing that. And that's the whole Magni thing coming into play, or Murden, or what it's Magni, whatever the Explorer one is, Magni champion, you know. But we've got to heal her wounds. So yeah, I mean, sometimes you get weird story stuff to make the gameplay make sense, but my hope is that they go back and forth on that and say,
sure.
this is what we could do, this is what we could write, this is a progression system we may be able to implement, or a feature we may be able to implement, like the battle plans, or what were they called in BFA, the little the big RTS style battles that they had.
Yeah,
Right, so they had like the whole Battle of Darkshore, and then the Battle of Arathor, I think it was something like that, where you there were story reasons for the Darkshore one that followed the story, and I think there were meant to be far more of those than there were. But again, sort of like with Warlords of Draenor, I feel that Battle for Azeroth was kind of had a rushed ending. I
yeah,
actually kind of think Shadowlands also had a bit of a rushed ending, but we'll see if they can
yeah.
bring that back up to snuff. I think Dragonflight, I think they've learned a lot of lessons, and I think Dragonflight's going to be. I'm really hoping, and everything I've heard, and I can't discuss everything, but everything I've heard about it seems to be like it's going to be on par with Legion in terms of just how good of an expansion it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of have you ever done your own headcanon that makes sense of some stuff sometimes?
Oh, absolutely, all the time, all the time, and I have to be really careful about that. Being like when I'm doing my lore podcast, not to inject my head canon into the story itself, right? But yeah, all the time, I'll have my own head canon of why someone is doing something or not doing something, or having, I don't call them head canon, I call them theories that haven't been proven yet. But
yeah, like in my headcanon theory thing, like back in classic again, going back there, we rescue the Alliance people rescue that guy in the dark in the Blackrock Death Prison, right? And we go and expose Nixia, right? Then we have to go fight her. But in order to fight her, we have to go through that chain quest through the upper Blackrock Spire, right? And
yeah,
stuff.
UBRS.
But the only reason we had the reason to go there, besides people had the reason to go there, were the Horde to fight, the Dark Horde and stuff. So in my head canon, I guess they went through there and like we don't need to. They got the Nixon 2 men like we don't need this. Here you go. You guys can have it. Alliance can have it. We have no reason to go to Nixia.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a mechanics versus story thing, and I think that's always a fight that both sides are trying really hard to win. The story and narrative team are going to want certain things that the gameplay and development team aren't going to agree with, and vice versa. So there's going to be some give and some take in that, and it doesn't always work, right? Like, it doesn't always work out. Where sometimes it's like they tried to make it work so well that it didn't work at all, and sometimes, and it's honestly, it's the times that you don't notice it that everything went according to plan, right? Like, it's the times that you don't notice something is wrong or something is weird, that and that happens, I think, way more often than the times that it doesn't. It's just,
Yeah.
unfortunately, the times that it doesn't work are in your face and you can
Yeah.
point to them directly.
Like, it depends on who you are. Some people are just like in for the game, like play the game, don't care, leveling up. Other people, like some people like us, like the story is like I like the story, but oh my God, it's driving me crazy. Why is this way? It's like the story person you is like, this makes no sense.
Well, as someone who, number one, like, I play the game for the story, and number two, as someone who's much older now,
Yeah.
and has kids and a family and a wife and all of that, I just don't have the time to invest that WoW wants me to invest in it, right? Like, I get so far behind on things all the time in that game because I just don't have the ability to spend 2 to 3 hours a night playing it. I maybe get 2 or 3 hours a week to play
Yeah,
the
me
game
too.
outside of raiding.
I know. I log in on Tuesday nights for the Black Temple raid, do it, and then log back out for another 2 weeks, another week.
Yeah. I mean, like, the reason that they're doing all of these things is to prevent raid logging, which is exactly what you described. People that only log on to raid. But the people that are only logging on to raid are still paying the same amount of money as the people that do spend 8 hours a day playing the game and are, always on top of their dailies and all of their grinds and all of their progression systems and things like that. So why do I feel the casual player gets incredibly punished, not being able to experience all of the things that these other players do, just because we have, like, priorities in in life. That, not to say that people that do play 8 hours a day are bad people in any way.
Yeah.
It's just, I pay the same amount of money as them.
Yeah.
I feel like I should be able to at least, and they're doing a little bit better with catch up mechanics and things like that. But
Yeah.
it is definitely a thing.
That's one thing. And you mentioned it earlier. Um, I did spend a lot of time playing, being prepared, doing all those attunements in BC, like the Black Temple, the High Jaw, all the to get there. Like, I did it one time, and it took me forever. I'm like, oh God, I'm exhausted now.
Yeah, when I did that, I was 17, 18 years old. You know, I had the ability to be on the game for hours and hours and hours and not miss anything, right? But now I can't. I have to go change diapers and cook dinner and go to work, And again, it's nothing against the people that do have the time. I'm not judging your circumstances or your priorities at all. It's just, some of us don't have that option. Some of
We're
us
not
don't have
17.
that
We're not
choice.
17 anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
We can't log on after school and play until mom says go to bed.
Right. And then you wait for her to fall asleep and hop back on anyway.
Of course, it was much harder back then for me because at the time I still had dial up, so it's like a little bit difficult. Like, hope no one calls the house while you're downloading stuff. All right, so any new thing coming up on this season on Winter's Lore on the radio?
Well, right now, obviously, we're on a little bit of a mid-season break, a mid-season hiatus in between the ending of Shadowlands and going into Dragonflight. But we will definitely be back to talk about Dragonflight and all of the dragon lore that comes out of that and all the new stuff, and revisiting sort of those old aspects and stories that involve the Dragonflights and sort of their creation and the defeat of Galakrond and all of that. So definitely, if you're interested in lore and a community sort of aspect of that, it's not just me hosting the show. We have a whole set of hosts that like to get on and just sort of jive about the lore for a little while. If that's something you're into and you're listening to this, well, head over to warcraftradio.com, go to shows, click on But Wait, There's Lore, or just go to pod.co/BWTL, and you can catch up on all the cool stuff. We do like these really cool features. One of my favorite things we did on this season was it was both on the podcast and a video where we basically took, like, if you took the Burning Legion and put them against the forces of the Maw and the Jailer, right? Like, if you put the army of Sargeras versus the army of the Jailer of Zoval, who would win? And that was a really fun thing to kind of jump into and get into and talk about. And we do a lot of theory crafting and things like that. But that was by far one of my favorite things. I remember a couple of years ago before BlizzCon, the last BlizzCon that we had, we also did a thing where we, as lore people, created a fourth specialization for every single class, and that was a lot of fun too. So we do a lot of fun stuff like that. We try and have a lot of fun with the lore and the story and such, not just teach but also entertain.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing before you have to go, because you give me a thought. What do you think of the Dreadlords were working for the jailer the whole time, and you were just using the Legion and came up challenge?
Well, I'm not even sure that they're working necessarily for the jailer either. I think that we will see Dreadlords again in a future expansion that deals with a little known opposite of the light called the Void. And I think the Dreadlords are actually the real people in charge of the Dreadlords is the Void Lords. That's my theory. That's my thought on that.
Oh, Morgan, thanks for being on again. It was nice talking to you.
Absolutely.
Check out his podcast. If you want to learn more about the story of the Warcraft, it's excellent. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, you've been listening for a long time. I remember, like, season 4 may have been the first time I said the name Vandalia in the chat has a question.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I had to catch up with time, but yeah, it's pretty cool. You have a catchphrase you say at the end of your shows?
Do I have a catchphrase that I say at the end of my shows? No, not really. I may have had one at one point, but I'm so old now I don't even remember what I had for breakfast in the morning.
Yeah, I remember. I think I remember your beginning of the catchphrase was "Kill the orcs, kill them all."
Oh, slay the orcs, slay them all.
Right. As I always said at the end of my shows, never stop learning and enjoy the randomness. I'll see you next time. Bye.